Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Western North Carolina fishing report with Dale Collins at Tuckasegee Fly Shop. How you doing, Dale?
Doing great, Marvin. Just getting off the water. Great day on the Western North Carolina Fly Fishing Trail, floating the Tuckasegee Delayed Harvest, and the net was active today. It was a good day.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I looked at your weather, and I mean, you guys are certainly settling into, kind of the heart of fall. I think we were talking before we started recording, and, you legitimately probably got your first frost last night.
Yeah, it was nice to get to the boat this morning to get ready for the trip, and, the seats are frosty, and, you kind of have to let the boat warm up a little bit, and you get to the ramp, and the water's, in the 50s, but it feels so much warmer than the air. So cold starts in the, 30s and low 40s, but by 10 o'clock, man, you're shedding layers. So it feels really nice to be out there right now.
Got it. And so what are you seeing on the water?
So we saw, like typical early delayed harvest in October. In the beginning of the game, it was, the typical junk food. But on the Tuckasegee, we've seen it since this cold snap. Fall showed up this last weekend. And so we finally got cool weather, but we've seen it get technical now. So, little saw tackles, small naturals, like small hare's ears, small prince nymphs, small pheasant tails. So you almost want to throw nymphs like you would if you were fishing the national park. And the fish are respond. They're aggressive fish, very, very feisty, acrobatic when you hook up. So make sure you got your knots tied really well. Generally 6X is going to be what you need to have out there. Even if you're trying to wade at 700 or so, you need to have some 6X on there because they've been educated pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. And I mean, you won't get another batch of fish for probably, another 2 to 3 weeks. So they're only going to get smarter. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly right. And, I thought they were spread out really nicely. They, a lot of times beginning of delayed harvest, they can be grouped up. But I think with the flows we've had with Duke Energy and the good Lord giving us some rain there a couple weeks ago, they've spread out nicely.
Yeah. And speaking of rain, I mean, you're going to be pretty dry for the next week to 10 days. So, obviously, fishing the Tuck is very, very different than being up on the Freestones up in the park. What should people expect up there?
I think you need to just go ahead and start with 6X. It's certainly going to be dry dropper, blue wing olives coming off all throughout the day, October caddis in the mornings and the evenings. Your orange stimulators, parachute Adams, things like that are going to be really nice. But I think go ahead and start with 6X and put those small pheasant tails and hare's ears underneath those patterns, and just go ahead and rule out whether or not you're using too big a tippet. Like just start at 6X and go from there.
Yeah, there you go. Because if you break off a bunch, you can always go up. And if you figure out you don't really need it, that's all good too.
That's right.
Yeah. And we have a question for you, and it's really kind of an update from the flood activity you guys had a while back, and had a question from a listener who wanted to get a feel for how the flood has affected the trout populations on the east and the west forks of the Pigeon River.
Yeah. So great question. The East Fork is the road is currently now open all the way up to the Blue Ridge Parkway. So you can get all the way up to the top, or if you're coming from the Davidson River, Pisgah Forest area, you can come all the way over the top and down into the to the East Fork. And there is a lot of extra fish in there right now, but do be mindful of private land in there. NC Wildlife doesn't really have a presence there in terms of public mountain trout water. So just be respectful of that, and just know, there's flood debris everywhere. If you go up there, you're going to be standing behind, people's cars that are wrapped around trees and, 6 feet up in the tree. So, I think it's probably best to avoid it. But the West Fork, man, that is wide open. So NC Wildlife, of course, has a delayed harvest and hatchery supported section. And I believe, off the top of my head, I'm not sure about it, but I believe the West Fork of the Pigeon downstream of Lake Logan is actually considered wild trout regulations, and it's fishing really nice too. So, the West Fork, that's where it's at. If you're coming to that area, I think it's probably best to just be respectful of what's going on there on the East Fork, and just go fish the West Fork. There were fish still in the delayed harvest. Bobby and I went up to the Iron Bridge there on the West Fork of the Pigeon, and there were two brook trout from the hatchery sitting right under the bridge a week after the flood. So fish find ways to hold. We're looking to see the bug life come back a little better than it was before, because a lot of the sediment's blown out of there. Everything's fine with water quality. So it's probably a best case scenario for the West Fork than even what it was prior or before the flood.
Got it. And folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or send them to us on our Facebook or Instagram page. And if we use your question, I'll send you some articulate fly swag, and we will enter you a drawing for something cool from the shops at the end of the season. And Dale, before I let you hop, why don't you let folks know your 3 locations and your hours and all that kind of good stuff?
Yep. So hours at all 3 locations are going to be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Waynesville, Silva, and Bryson City. And, check it out on Google Maps or find us online at tuckflyshop.com. And you can see all those locations. Give us a call, email. We'll be there for you.
Well, there you go. And as I always say, folks, fall is my favorite time to get out there and fish. You owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Dale.
You too, Marvin.